Welcome to tonight's broadcast. Tonight's first submission comes from a man named Marco. He's 27 now, but this happened when he was 15 years old and left home alone for the first time overnight. His parents thought he was safe. His neighborhood was quiet, his door was locked, but Marco says that night taught him something he still believes today. Sometimes the person trying to get inside your house already knows your name. This is his story. I was 15 when this happened. I'm 27 now, and even after all these years, I still check every window before I go to sleep. Back then, my family lived in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. People are very friendly, and nothing really happens after dark, except sprinklers turning on and dogs barking at night. My parents were strict, but not unreasonable. I had never been left alone overnight before, but that weekend, my mom's sister had gone into labor 2 towns over. My dad drove my mom to the hospital, and because it was already late, they decided I could stay home. My older brother was away at college, and I remember feeling excited. I was finally trusted. My mom gave me the usual warnings before she left: lock the doors, don't open the door for anyone, don't stay up too late, call if anything feels wrong. I laughed and told her I'd be fine. That was the last time I felt normal that night. By 10 o'clock, the house felt quiet. I had eaten leftover pizza, watched TV, and played video games in the living room. At first, being alone felt amazing. No one telling me to lower the volume and no one telling me to go to bed. But around 11:30, I started noticing the silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like something is waiting. Our living room had a big sliding glass door that led to the backyard. During the day, it looked out towards the fence and a small patch of trees behind our house. At night, it turned into a black mirror. I could see my own reflection sitting on the couch, and behind my reflection, nothing. At least that's what I thought. Around midnight, I heard a sound from outside, a soft scraping noise. I muted the TV. The sound stopped. I sat there for a few seconds, staring at the glass door. Then it happened again. It sounded like something dragging across wood fence. I told myself it was a raccoon. We had them sometimes. They got into trash cans and climbed fences. But then I heard a low whistle. It wasn't a bird, and it wasn't windy. The whistle I heard was more like a human whistle. It was slow and playful. I couldn't move. I completely froze. The whistle came again. This time it was closer. I stood up slowly and walked to the sliding door, careful not to make the floor creak. The backyard was dark except for the weak porch light. It lit up the patio, the chairs, and part of the grass. As I scanned the yard, that's when I saw him. A man was standing near the back fence. At first, I thought it was my dad, but this man was taller. He wore a black jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His hands were in his pocket, and he stood perfectly still, facing the house, facing me. I stepped back so fast I bumped into the coffee table. The man didn't move. He just stood there. I grabbed my phone and called my dad. No answer. I called my mom. No answer. Then I remembered they were probably inside the hospital where service was bad. I didn't want to call 911 yet because part of me kept thinking maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe someone had wandered into the wrong yard. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. Then I answered. For 3 seconds, there was only breathing. Then a man's voice whispered, Marco. I hung up immediately. I felt my blood turn cold. He knew my name. I ran to the front door and checked the lock, then the garage door, then the laundry room door, then every window I could think of, all locked. When I got back to the living room, the man was no longer by the fence. He was standing on the patio, closer now. The porch light flickered above him. He lifted one hand and waved, not fast, but also not friendly. Just one slow wave. Then he pointed towards the sliding door. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I backed away from the door and called 911. The operator asked me what was happening. I told her there was a man in my backyard. I told her I was home alone. I told her he knew my name. She told me police were on the way and instructed me to go to a room with a lock. I ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom because it had the strongest door. I locked it behind me and pushed a door under the handle like I'd seen in movies. Then I crawled into the corner beside the bed and tried to stay quiet. For a few minutes, I heard nothing. Then came the sound. He was tapping at their bedroom window. I slowly turned my head. My parents' bedroom was on the second floor. No one should have been able to reach that window. But there he was, outside the glass. His face was mostly hidden by the baseball cap, but I could see his mouth. He was smiling. A ladder leaned against the side of the house. I screamed and dropped the phone. The operator shouted, asking if I was okay. The man placed a finger against the window, then slowly dragged it down the glass, making a squeaking noise. I ran into the bathroom connected to my parents' room and locked that door too. I sat inside the bathtub with the shower curtain pulled closed, holding my phone with both hands. The operator told me police were almost there. Then I heard glass break. Not the bedroom window, downstairs, the sliding glass door. He was inside. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. Footsteps moved through the living room, slow and calm, like he wasn't in a hurry, like he knew he had time. I heard him walking up the stairs. Each step creaked under his weight. One, two, three. Then he stopped outside my parents' bedroom door. The doorknob turned, and the chair held. For a moment, nothing happened. Then he knocked. Three soft knocks. And in a calm voice, he said, "Marco, your mom told me to come and get you." That sentence almost broke me, because for half a second, some terrified part of my brain wanted to believe him. Then he laughed, a quiet, breathy laugh. He started hitting the bedroom door. The chair scraped against the floor. I could hear the wood beginning to crack. Then the bathroom doorknob moved. He had gotten into the bedroom. Now only one door separated us. He knocked on the bathroom door, softly. "Marco," he whispered, "open up." I didn't move. The doorknob twisted harder. Then he began kicking the door. The frame cracked. I screamed into the phone, and then from outside, I heard sirens. The kicking stopped. There was a pause, then footsteps running. I heard him rush down the stairs. A few seconds later, police burst into the house. They found me in the bathtub, shaking so badly I couldn't stand. The man had escaped to the backyard. But here's the part that still makes me sick. The police found a backpack behind our shed. Inside were zip ties, gloves, duct tape, a hunting knife, and a printed photo of my house. There was also a piece of notebook paper with my name written on it. Marco, 15. Parents gone Friday night. They never caught him. My parents moved us out less than a month later. For years, I told myself he was just a stranger who had been watching our house. But when I was 22, my mom finally admitted something. 2 weeks before that night, a man had knocked on our door asking if we needed yard work done. My mom said no, but apparently he kept asking questions. How many people lived there? Was my dad usually home? Did I go to school nearby? My mom thought he was just awkward. She never told me because she didn't want to scare me. But I think about that man often. I think about how long he watched us, how he learned my name, how he knew I'd be alone. And every now and then, when I'm lying in bed and the house is quiet, I swear I hear three notes being whistled outside my window: slow, playful, waiting. This next submission came from a woman named Connie. She says she was 16 when it happened. She's 26 now. Her parents had left her home alone because of a family emergency, and at first, nothing seemed unusual until she heard footsteps coming from a room that did not exist. This is her story. I was 16 when I spent the night alone in the house I grew up in. I'm 26 now, and I still don't like sleeping in a house with an attic. My parents weren't the type to leave me alone often. My dad was protective, and my mom worried about everything. But that night, my grandfather had fallen and was taken to the hospital. My parents had to drive 3 hours away to be with him. They asked if I wanted to come. I said no. I had school the next morning, and honestly, I wanted the house to myself. My mom hesitated before leaving. She reminded me to keep the porch light on, lock out every door, and call if I needed anything. Then she said something strange. Don't go upstairs after midnight. I laughed because our house only had one floor. She stared at me for a second. Then she said, I mean, don't go into the attic. I thought she was just stressed. Our attic entrance was in the hallway ceiling, one of those pull down ladder doors. I had only been up there twice in my life, both times with my dad. It was dusty, cramped, and full of Christmas decorations, old boxes, and insulation. Nothing interesting. At least that's what I thought. That night, I made macaroni and cheese, watched TV, and texted my friends, bragging about having the house to myself. Around 11:45, I turned off the living room lights and went to my bedroom. My room was at the end of the hallway. From my bed, I could see straight down the hallway if my door was open. I left it cracked. I felt safer being able to see down the hallway. At 12:06, I heard the first footstep. It came from above me. As I sat up, I heard another step. They were slow steps, but heavy, directly over my bedroom. I stared at the ceiling. My first thought was an animal had gotten into the attic, maybe a raccoon or possum. Then the footsteps crossed from one side of the ceiling to another, but they didn't sound like claws. They sounded like shoes. I called my dad, but there was no answer. I called my mom, and she didn't answer, so I texted her. I think something is in the attic. The message stayed blue, but she didn't reply. Then the footsteps stopped. For about 5 minutes, the house went silent again. I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Then I heard something much worse. A voice, a woman's voice, softly humming. It came from above the hallway. I got out of bed and slowly walked to my door. The hallway was dark except for the bathroom nightlight. The attic door was closed. The humming continued. It sounded old, not like a song on the radio, more like a lullaby. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. Her text said, Don't answer it. I stared at the words. Then another message came in. Stay in your room, lock your door. My hands started shaking. I replied, What is it? For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she wrote, Your father will explain later. That was when the attic door creaked. I looked down the hallway. The rectangular attic panel in the ceiling shifted slightly. Not open, just moving, like someone above it was pressing down. I stepped back into my room, closed the door, and locked it. The humming stopped. Then came a knock. Not on my bedroom door, on the ceiling. 3 knocks, directly above my bed. I backed into the corner and called my mom. She didn't answer. Then, from above me, a voice said, Connie. It sounded like my mom, exactly like her. But my mom was 3 hours away. The voice came again. Sweetheart, open the attic door. I covered my mouth. The voice changed. Now it sounded like my dad. Connie, help me. I'm stuck up here. Then my grandfather. Then my own voice. A perfect copy of me, whispering from above the ceiling. Don't be scared. I started crying silently. The thing above me began crawling. Not walking, crawling. Its weight moved slowly across the attic floor until it reached the hallway. Then I heard the attic ladder release. The wooden steps unfolded one by one. I could see shadows under my bedroom door. Something had come down. It walked through the hallway, slowly, barefoot. I could hear skin sticking to the wood floor. The doorknob turned, and I backed away. Connie, my mother's voice whispered from the other side. It's cold out here. I didn't answer. The doorknob stopped moving. Then the voice said something I had never told anyone. Remember when you were 8 and hid under the kitchen table because you broke the blue vase? My stomach dropped. Only my mom knew that. Then it said, I saw you. The voice changed again. Now it was a little girl. Can I sleep in your room? I shut my eyes and prayed. For almost an hour, it stood outside my door. Sometimes it knocked, sometimes it whispered, sometimes it scratched the wood with what sounded like fingernails. Then suddenly, everything stopped. At 3:14 in the morning, my dad's truck pulled into the driveway. I ran out of my room screaming and nearly collapsed into his arms. My mom was behind him, pale and terrified. My grandfather was okay. They had left the hospital early after my mom got my text. My dad searched the house with a baseball bat. Nothing. The attic ladder was closed, but my bedroom door had scratches on it, deep ones, from the outside. The next morning, my parents told me the truth. Years before I was born, the previous owners had a daughter named Elise. She disappeared from the house when she was 9 years old. Police searched everywhere and found nothing. Nobody. No evidence. Nothing. But after that, people started hearing footsteps in the attic, a child crying, a woman humming, voices of family members. My parents bought the house cheap because nobody wanted it. At first, they didn't believe the stories. Then my mom heard it when she was pregnant with me. A little girl whispering from the hallway, Can I have your baby? My parents nearly moved then, but money was tight. After I was born, things got quiet until that night. We moved 6 months later. I tried to forget about it, but 2 years ago, I searched the old address online. The house had been sold again. The listing showed the bedrooms, kitchen, living room, backyard, and one photo of the hallway. In the picture, the attic door was open, and at the top of the ladder, barely visible in the darkness, was a little girl's hand. The house listing disappeared the next day. I don't know who lives there now, but I hope they listen when someone tells them not to go upstairs after midnight, even if the house only has one floor. Our final submission tonight comes from a man named Adrian. He said this happened when he was 17 and stayed home alone during a storm. His parents thought he was old enough to handle one night by himself, but Adrian says he was never really alone. And the scariest part is that whatever was in the house may have been protecting him from something worse. This is his story. I was 17 when this happened. I'm 28 now, and I've only told this story to 3 people. One of them laughed, one of them told me never to repeat it again, and one of them cried because she said the same thing happened to her cousin. It was the summer before my senior year. My parents had gone out of town for my aunt's anniversary dinner. I was supposed to go with them, but I had a stomach ache and convinced them to let me stay home. The plan was simple. They would leave around 6 after dinner, stay overnight at my aunt's house, and come back the next morning. I wasn't nervous. I liked being alone. Our house was old, but not creepy in the way old houses usually are. It had creaky floors, a narrow hallway, and too many family photos on the wall. But it felt lived in. It felt safe. That night, a storm rolled in around 9. Heavy rain hit the windows. Thunder shook the walls. The lights flickered a few times, but they stayed on. I was in the living room watching a movie when I heard a woman cough, not from the TV, from the hallway. I muted the movie. The hallway was empty. I called out, "Mom?" Nothing. I knew my mom wasn't home, but the cough sounded exactly like her, a dry, tired cough. I walked down the hall and checked every room: my parents' room, the guest room, the bathroom, my room. Nothing. I went back to the living room and tried to ignore it. 10 minutes later, I heard it again, this time closer, right behind the wall. Then a whisper: "Lock the back door." I jumped off the couch. The voice was female, older, calm. I grabbed a kitchen knife and ran to the back door. It was unlocked. That bothered me because I was sure I had locked it earlier. I locked it, then pulled on the handle to make sure. Outside, rain poured over the patio. At the far end of the yard, near the fence, I saw a figure standing under the trees. A man. He was wearing a raincoat. His face was hidden. Lightning flashed, and for 1 second, I saw him clearly. He was staring at the house. I backed away from the door. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Finally, I answered. A man said, "You alone tonight?" I hung up. Almost immediately, there was a knock at the front door. I didn't move. The knock came again. Then a voice called out, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. My car broke down. Can I use your phone?" I stayed silent. He knocked harder. "I know someone's home. I can see the light." I called 911. The storm must have affected the signal because the call failed twice before I finally connected. I told the operator there was a man outside my house. While I was speaking, I heard the woman again. "Do not stand near the window." The voice came right beside me. I turned. Nobody was there, but I listened. I dropped to the floor. A second later, something smashed through the living room window. A brick. Glass exploded across the couch where I had been standing. The operator asked what happened. I told her he was breaking in. Police were on their way, but the storm was bad. The operator told me to hide somewhere with a lock. I ran towards the hallway. Then I saw her. At the end of the hall stood a woman in a pale nightgown. She looked old fashioned, like someone from an old photograph. Her hair was long and gray. Her face was turned away from me. She lifted one hand and pointed to the bathroom. I don't know why, but I trusted her. I ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and climbed into the cabinet under the sink. I barely fit, but I squeezed inside and pulled the door mostly closed. Seconds later, I heard the back door burst open. The man was inside. He didn't rush. He walked slowly. His boots squeaked on the wet floor. "Hello," he called. His voice sounded different now. No fake panic, no kindness, just amusement. "I know you're here." He moved through the kitchen, opened drawers, knocked things over. Then he laughed. "You should have helped me when I asked." I held my breath. He walked down the hallway. The bathroom door knob rattled. He tried it once, twice, then stopped. For a moment, I thought he left. Then I heard him whisper through the door, "I can hear you breathing." My chest burned as I tried not to make a sound. The doorknob turned again. Then something strange happened. From the hallway, the woman's voice said, "He's in the bathroom." The man froze. Then his footsteps moved away from the bathroom. He walked towards my bedroom. The door opened, then slammed shut. The man screamed, not startled, not angry, terrified. He screamed like something had grabbed him. The entire house shook. Pictures fell from the hallway walls. The lights flickered. Then I heard running. The man ran down the hallway, crashed into something, and screamed again. Then the front door flew open. Rain and wind rushed inside. A few minutes later, police arrived. They found me still hiding under the sink. They searched the house. The man was gone, but they found blood on my bedroom floor. Not enough to suggest he died, just enough to prove something had happened. The strangest part was my bedroom door. On the inside, carved deep into the wood, were 5 words: "Leave the boy alone." The police thought the intruder had done it, but that made no sense. Why would he carve that from inside my bedroom while running for his life? My parents came home that night. My mom cried when she saw me. My dad didn't say much. But when he saw the words on the door, his face changed. He knew something. Years later, he told me. Before we lived there, an elderly woman named Miss Bell owned the house. She had lived alone after her husband died. One night, someone broke in during a storm. A neighbor heard screaming, but police arrived too late. Miss Bell was found in the hallway. They never caught the killer. My dad said he didn't tell us because he didn't want us scared. But after I told him about the woman in the nightgown, he showed me an old photo from the previous owner. It was her, Miss Bell, the same woman I saw in the hallway. I wish I could say that was the last strange thing that happened, but it wasn't. A week later, the police caught the man who broke into our house. He had attacked 2 other people in nearby neighborhoods. They found tools, rope, and knives in his car. When detectives questioned him, he refused to talk about my house. Eventually, one officer told my dad that the man said only one thing: there was an old woman in there. Then he asked if she was still alive. We moved out the next year. I don't know what happened to Miss Bell or why she protected me, but sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't heard her voice, if I hadn't locked the back door, if I hadn't moved away from the window, and if I hadn't hidden in the bathroom. A killer came into my house that night, but something else was already there. And whatever it was, it didn't want me to die the way she did. And those were 3 Home Alone submissions from people who say one night changed the way they see their own home forever. If you were home alone and heard something moving in the dark, would you check it out? Or would you lock the door and pretend you heard nothing? Thank you for listening to tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more horror, mystery, and late night submissions. And remember, sometimes the scariest places to be is a place where you're supposed to feel safe. Until the shadows call again, good night.